Hello and welcome to Radio Free Nintendo. I am James Joseph, joined today by Mr. Greg Leahy.
Ahoy, hoy, everyone.
Mr. Guillaume Bayat.
Good evening.
And no one else, because John is not able to join us this week. It is January 29th, 2026. And this is episode 961. And we're going to start the show off with some new business. There was some news this week. We're going to get to it. I'm not new business. I'm sorry. We're going to start the show off with some listener mail. New business is a little bit weak. So we're going to start it off with some listener mail, and then we get on the other side. If we've got new business, we'll deal with it. Otherwise, we'll talk about some of the content that Nintendo has put out through its various social media channels. But we're going to kick it off with listener mail. Emails go to rfn@nintendoworldreport.com. And Greg, I would like you to read the first email.
Sure. So Vince writes, "Good evening, gents. I'm listening to episode 956, and James just disparaged my beloved San Antonio Spurs by saying Ty the Tasmanian Tiger is like getting drafted 18th by the Spurs, flaming out and playing out your days in the Euro League. First of all, how dare you? Spurs are notable for drafting Hall of Famer Manu Ginobili. I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with the pronunciation. Oh, Ginobili, sorry. 57th. Second of all, you're right. Our recent first-round draft picks pre-Wemby in 2023 were all cut within 2 years. Okay,
I didn't just make this up. I knew what I was referencing.
Yeah, he's acknowledging that you were right. So it's, it's acknowledging you were right while maintaining and reserving the right to still be outraged. But, it's like Marge with the, he shouldn't say it, though.
That's exactly where I was at. He's right, but he shouldn't say it.
Yeah. Back to Manu. What game came out of nowhere to become a Hall of Fame game? Thanks for the snow.
I like this. See, you take us, disparaging something you love and turn it into a relevant question. That's email work. That's putting in the work in your email. You guys should do that too. Because I see some of you not putting in any work in your emails. I see some of you putting in too much work in your emails also. All right, so I got a few options here. I assume we talked about this one before the shows. I don't know that we shared answers, but we talked about games how to define Hall of Famer. Is this a personal Hall of Fame?
That's kind of the crux of it for me. I kind of had to come up with multiple categories in my head a little bit, because it's kind of okay, what is something that's in my personal Hall of Fame? These are, the very most sort of beloved games in my own mind that I was not anticipating at all. I was not following them very closely. They were not sort of blue chip prospects, shall we say, in that kind of vernacular, versus, ones that would be things that are more perhaps widely considered to be excellent games, great games, among the best of their era, that are still held in high regard today by a broad section of people who, are, interested in the history of the medium. So those aren't necessarily going to have the most overlap. So I could have tried to come up with examples in each camp.
Yeah. I'm kind of going with, not everything makes it into the Hall of Fame, no matter what Hall of Fame you're talking about. Or everyone, as the case may be. But sometimes you get Hall of Fame inclusions that aren't necessarily wow, this was the biggest name in their moment in time, but more that they did something really special and they got voted on by their peers accordingly. Legitimately, if it was really just based on fame, how many kickers would be in the Hall of Fame? 3? 4? But their peers are a little bit more, or the coaches are a little bit more willing to recognize greatness in a space that ultimately only we really notice when you really suck at it. You can say the same thing about offensive linemen. Defensive linemen, they can rack up sacks and stuff, and that can get them attention. But offensive linemen, really great offensive linemen, can go unnoticed their whole career, because basically, if they're successful, the eventful thing doesn't happen. The success for them is defined as nothing eventful happening. So, getting attention. So, I kind of went with my list and said, some of these games are truly great. They may not have the the name brand recognition of a Fortnite, which could absolutely be an answer to this, by the way. But they have an intrinsic value all their own that makes them stand out amongst a more informed audience than necessarily like the core voter group. That's not to say that you're stupid if you don't know these games. It's just a statement of like, there are some times that people make the Hall of Fame because ball knowers know ball. And sometimes you make the Hall of Fame because your name was everywhere, even if you're not necessarily the best at your position. Like there's no consistency in the process. And so our process will also be inconsistent, I suspect. Not that I'm talking about anybody in particular missing the Hall of Fame on a vote. That would be in a timely way for this conversation. It's impossible. Impossible that could be anybody who's relevant to this conversation. Everyone who has made the Hall of Fame recently deserved it, and everyone who didn't otherwise. Obviously. Guillaume, why don't you give us one?
Yeah, I'm not sure if I understood Hall of Famer the same way that you guys did, because I'm not really into sports.
We're going to be inconsistent, so it's fine.
So I think that maybe like one that can't really be disputed, that it kind of came out of nowhere through Nintendo of America's fault, I would say. But as a Hall of Famer is Xenoblade Chronicles.
Ooh.
A game that was going to be passed over in North America at first. It did have like an E3 presence where it was shown, but like barely, right? Like it was like tucked away in a corner. Like
NOA really didn't even want it there. Like they were upset it was present.
Right. And then like they chose like, no, we're going to pass on it. And Nintendo of Europe went and handled the localization, and now it's, like it's a 4-game series at this point.
With multiple remakes.
Yeah.
And Smash inclusions.
Yeah, it came out of nowhere, not because the developer lacked pedigree or anything like that. Like, it's very much because of Nintendo of America's lack of faith in it. But eventually, like the people who saw that it might be something special, and then they played it, and it was something special, and now it's a very, beloved Nintendo franchise. The developers who made it are helping out on
everything.
The biggest Nintendo franchises, so yeah.
Their experience definitely fed into things like Breath of the Wild.
Yes.
I would also say that we point at NOA because Reggie very famously was part of this game not getting released here, but NCL as well. If NCL said, no, this game is important, fucking release it, it would have been released. Like, as much as we talk about NOA being independent, NCL is still the boss. If NCL had said, no, this is a tentpole game for us, you're going to localize it and release it, fucking do it, it would have gotten done.
It definitely was a period where NOA felt like they had a little bit more.
Oh, sure.
So maybe they listened to NOA more, shall we say, in that period. Right. I mean, because the story. Doesn't the story go that Reggie was pretty much, and presumably his team, in a way, were pretty forceful in asserting that Wii Sports needed to be a pack-in outside of Japan?
Yes.
And, it was the right call. I thought it's really hard to argue that he wasn't entirely correct about that, because it wasn't in Japan. In Japan, it was a separate game, even after, I guess, Reggie was able to successfully make that argument to head office. That didn't change their plans in Japan. And of course it was, we were still very successful in Japan, so it's not like it sank it or anything, but it's still, you've got to say, that was a good call, and maybe they perceived it as such, and kind of as the generation progressed, they had that latitude to say, no, we don't want to focus on this, we do want to focus on that. But I think you're quite right. Most of the time, we probably attribute too much responsibility to NOA rather than too little.
Yeah, but no, Guillaume, I don't know why I didn't think of this one. Nailed it, 100%. Like, I had to fucking import this game from Europe.
So did I.
And eventually it did come out in the West on Wii, but you had to buy it through GameStop, who handled publishing or handled distribution duties in North America, which is weird as shit. They also did that for, was it The Last Story? Yes. Yeah, it was Last Story. Not to be confused with Final Fantasy. I don't know why you would connect those two games at all. And I think they did it for Pandora's Tower as well. I can't remember. But they
Exceed
did
was Pandora's Tower.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you're right. It was Exceed. GameStop did some real hinky shit, though. Like, I never saw a new copy of it at my store, but I definitely saw a used copy within a day of it coming out. Which is weird for an 80-hour game. I'm actually going through all the TSIs I've made as part of the plan for the episode 1000 stuff, and one of the very first ones I did in the current style is a guy being arrested in a CEX shirt. And it was the episode was titled "Paid Sex Acts."
And the Beck reference was right there.
Oh yeah, the reference. What we were referencing with that title was this was right around the PS5's launch, and how CEX had used PS5s on sale for like twice the base price of a new one, like a day after they came out, and they had multiple. It's like, okay, we get it. You sold it to a staff member who sold it back to you for above price after opening it, and then you're selling it above that price. This is fucked up. What are you doing? That definitely happened. That definitely happened with Xenoblade Chronicles on Wii at GameStop locations, because the price they were paying for it was above retail, which doesn't make any sense because they were the only retailer. Like, it's just like, this is a scam. This is a scam! Now, later we'd find out that GameStop is a completely upright company that never engaged in anything scam-related or the such, and is now flourishing, thriving in the current economy. Oh, I heard they just closed 9 more GameStop locations in the last 5 minutes. Never mind. That's a great pull, Guillaume. Great one.
Mm-hmm.
Greg, what about you? You got one for us?
Sure, yeah. I mean, like I said, what's interesting about that, I guess, is by the time, it came out in America, it had gathered quite a lot of steam, I get it hadn't, because of the Operation Rainfall kind of campaign and the people who had imported it, were obviously some people played the Japanese version early and it kind of, already got going, the idea that it was really good. So it depends like at what point you kind of, kind of draw the line, but definitely when it was just like Monado Beginning of the World, which was what it was before. I think it was NCL that pushed the Xeno branding basically on it for the Japanese launch. It definitely was not something that you heard that much about. It was just, it's a somewhat uncharitable way of putting it, but it was the next game from the developers of Disaster Tape Crisis.
Right.
Which, of course, in a way also passed on. But yeah, for me, the first example I'm going to give is something that is a more personal example because, again, it's not something that's a big deal, to everyone. I don't know whether it's widely considered to be important enough to be in any kind of, hall of fame that's remembering the greats of a particular type or anything. But I would have to say N64 Sin and Punishment, which there's some overlap with Xenoblade here in terms of course, it was not localized at all, for anybody outside of Japan, even though it was done. There never was terribly much to localize in the first place. But of course, like when we got to Virtual Console, years later, we could see that it was always there. But it was just one of those things basically where I guess, rather like Animal Crossing for N64, some of the 64DD stuff, where it's just like, basically, if something kind of dragged on in the N64 generation and they'd reached the point where, they were just busy thinking about GameCube and all that, like, they still did release it in Japan, but it was kind of a bit of a perfunctory exercise, you know what I mean? Like, the N64 wasn't even that popular in Japan. So the idea of like, oh, well, if we're going to release this, we're just going to do it in that market is a bit peculiar because, like, that was one of the markets that was least likely to still have that much of an active player base. to play, you know, something like that. But of course, you know, doing a domestic release eliminates, you know, all these other costs. And in certain cases, like an Animal Crossing, well, that's easy to see because of the localization would have been extensive, right? You know, that's no mean feat at all to localize that for a bunch of different markets. But for Sin and Punishment, it just kind of suggested, like, yeah, you know, we are, you know, kind of, you're done with this, just put it out in the sort of lowest cost scenario possible, where we basically know it won't sell any amount of copies, but, you know, we just get something out of it, you know what I mean? We just, like, we can put the mission accomplished banner up or whatever. And it was an N64 game that had no real kind of buzz or anything before. You know, the N64 generation was something, if you were like me, it was online early, you know, relatively early, and following this stuff, as well as still, you know, following things through the magazines, over here that covered a lot of import, kind of stuff. There were so many games that you heard about literally for years. You know what I mean? And this was really kind of the first time that this was happening, where game development, because of the, you know, the move to 3D and all that, was getting, you know, complex enough that it's like, oh God, you know, we've been hearing about this game for years, but it's not coming out. And then, you know, there's more and more time for stuff to get kind of, you know, buzz in those sorts of circles, people get excited about or whatever. And then eventually, you know, it comes out. So, you know, you might, obviously Ocarina of Time was like that. We used to, you know, he spent years, you know, reading about it and seeing glimpses of things as Zelda 64, and when it was supposed to be coming out for the 64DD and all that, and then it only kind of enhanced the anticipation. Sin and Punishment was in a sort of development hell type of thing. I think Treasure started working on that. I think in the Iwata Asks for the sequel on Wii, they confirmed that they were working on that from like 1997. And it didn't come out till the end, well, somewhere towards the end of 2000, which is, you know, a vast amount of time for that kind of game at that, you know, in that time period. But I had no knowledge of it whatsoever. Nothing. No inkling of it until it came out, and just people had imported it and played it and thought that this kicks ass, actually. You know, like, it's really short. It's really short. And, you know, if you're not big into this kind of game, you know, it's kind of tough to justify the import premium. But for what it is, this absolutely, you know, kicks ass on a level that, you know, few games do. And, you know, it's just, you know, kind of Treasure, you know, channeling, you know, some of their kind of Gunstar Heroes magic, you know, into a polygonal 3D game, you know, and all this kind of stuff. So it's like, okay, well, I had not really, was at that time not that directly familiar with Treasure stuff even. I mostly knew them by reputation, because I have a friend who was big into the Saturn import scene, and I'd seen him playing Silhouette Mirage and stuff like that, and he would talk about Treasure a lot, but I hadn't even played like Mischief Makers that wasn't on, you know, N64, anything like that. So it was really just like, you know, okay, I know these guys by reputation. I know they split off from Konami, that, you know, these developers had, you know, stuff to do with Contra Spirits, Castlevania 4, you know, and then, you know, they made these other games that I'd heard about being great, like Gunstar Heroes and so forth. So it's like, let's give it a go. And I just fell in love with it. Incredible. But from, you know, basically we had no idea this game existed to it comes out, some people think it's good, to, you know, it's one of my absolute favourite games on that system, which itself had some of my absolute favourite games pretty much ever, you know, when you're talking about Mario 64 and Ocarina of Time and stuff like that. It was so sudden. It was so completely different from the agonising wait for Mario 64, Zelda 64, all that kind of stuff. It really, relatively, it did feel like it came out of nowhere.
I've got three that are all kind of weird answers, and so I'm going to have to justify them one at a time. So I'm going to start off with, this game never hit the huge breakout popularity thing. But you can make the same argument with Sin and Punishment. Like, it went from 0 to having some presence, so that
to being extant.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, like Xenoblade in like mass popularity terms is not like a runaway success, but you know, it's certainly vastly more so than Sin and Punishment in terms of it has a series of games, and they've all probably sold, you know, at least 1 million units each or something on Switch anyway.
Yeah. So I'm gonna start mine with Hypnospace Outlaw, which is when I said this is the ball knowers voting into the Hall of Fame. This is the players committee, because this is like a truly weird product that was just sort of dropped onto the internet, and they're like, have fun. That made its way to Switch with mouse and keyboard controls, that encapsulates an internet that doesn't exist anymore. But in the process created an absolute fucking ocean of memes. And memes that people may not even realize are coming from that game ultimately. It is a fascinating product, that is as deep as you want it to be. I mean, ultimately it's a point and click adventure game, but at its core, it's a lot more than that. Like, it's fucking with you as you play it. It's doing weird shit to you while you're trying to get through it. It's not to the, like, Doki Doki Literature Club, where it's literally fucking with the files to make you go look at shit. Which is not something you can do on the Switch version, obviously. But it does some other stuff to try to make up for that. But this is a game where it is consistently, like, barraging you with weirdness and ideas and creativity in ways that other products just don't. Like, it is, to put it into the sports context, it's like a Pistol Pete Maravich who had a very short career because of other issues. But in that moment, it was like an asteroid or a meteor in the sky. It just, like, everybody's eyes were cast upon it for its radiance for that moment. This is a game that is so weird and so, utterly creative, and is the product of so much just, like, inventive ideation and artwork and music and people trying to create fake websites from the 90s based on an internet that never happened, but not that far away from the internet of those of us who were signing in with CompuServe as small children would have experienced. But an internet that's about sleep. Because keep in mind, the idea of Hypnospace Outlaw is it's an internet that you browse while you're asleep. You wear a headset. And that's so they can broadcast ads into your brain. That's sort of the economic model. Those who have never played it, your job is a moderator of it's one of these micro internets. So like CompuServe had one, AOL had one, where it's like, it's not really like the full internet. It's this curated ecosystem that exists inside these service providers. And you can have your own pages inside that ecosystem that are tagged with links based on, you know, what interest groups you put them in and stuff like that. It's like web rings. These are things where if you aren't our age, you're going like, what the fuck's a web ring? And my answer to that is, man, NWR was in web rings. I can't help you.
Oh yeah, that's true.
It's a concept
that was pretty much not quite my first internet experience, but the second one was definitely CompuServe stuff.
Yeah,
right. That's how I experienced the internet in any significant way. Was through that.
Yeah, like my first one was through a internet service provider that was only available to educators in the state of Virginia, and it was text-based internet. It was before browsing, before Berners-Lee invented the browser.
Yeah, definitely had some kind of text-based. That was like the first they ever did with the first modem with a 24K modem. The first modem that we had, but obviously you just couldn't really do much with that. But then after that, there was CompuServe, and that's where I would have first seen like, you know, Nintendo.com and little screenshots of Mario 64 before it was coming out and whatnot.
For me, it was Lego.com. That was the first one of these I interacted with. But yeah, but also like the GeoCities era, like before we had social media, where you built your own social media literally from nothing. It's that, but that for when you're asleep in your brain, and so your job is to moderate this shit because they want it to be family friendly. It's weird, man. It's so weird, and it's so wonderful, and it's so creative, and it's telling lots of small stories. You know, you keep going to this person who keeps posting clips from, I want to say it's like a tokusatsu TV show. I can't remember. And you just keep deleting the shit they post because the company in question doesn't want their images posted. So you just keep deleting them. And she just writing increasingly angry blog posts at the person who keeps deleting the images on her site. It's just a weird sidebar to this much larger thing that's happening. And there's a ton of these. It kind of reminds me of, what was it called? The Meow Wolf exhibit I talked about a couple years ago. But it's in your computer harassing you as you play it. Like there is a core story, but then there's everything else happening around it. This game never got huge popularity. I want to say they did a sequel recently. But it's on Switch. You should play it. You should fucking play it. It's insane. You should play it on Steam as well if you want. Like it's weird and wonderful and goofy, and I just saw somebody playing it for the first time recently, and they were dying. They couldn't handle it. It's so weird and so silly and so ridiculous, and like the person who's playing just kept asking like, what the hell is hot butter ice cream? And it's like, well, there's a song, there's a jingle, it tells you what it is. You take hot butter and you mix it in the ice cream, then you heat it all up. That's what it is. Like, how's that a good product? It's not, but it doesn't matter. It's weird. My reminder for those of you who listened to the episode when I talked about it, I played that game with a fever of 102, having hallucinations. This was not a good combination of things. It was very weird. So it gets extra ball no votes from me because it made my fever dreams even more inscrutable. Guillaume, you got another one?
Yeah, but yeah, like, so these are more personal.
Okay.
I guess, like, I didn't see F-Zero GX coming because I didn't play F-Zero X in the first place, but I was not a big fan of the Super Nintendo game. And I was not a huge fan, like, I didn't know what, I hadn't played Sega games in so long, I didn't know what's their name, AM2, what they were capable of. Like, I had no context for that. So when F-Zero GX came out, like, I really didn't expect to love it as much as I did. And I really did think that it was just several steps above basically any other kind of, you know, futuristic racers that I had played before. And, you know, above, like, a lot of just regular racers, too. Just because, like, it's one of the few racers where I don't see any rubber banding outside of the story mode, of course. The story mode is
all
shit.
rubber banding.
Yeah, but especially the second stage.
But the valley?
Yeah, where the boulders are falling down and you're just racing against one racer, but yeah, like, he's definitely tied with a rubber band to you. But anyway, like, in the Grand Prix, like, you have several paths to victory. You could try to race perfectly through all of them, or you could just take out your rival. The tracks are inventive. Like, it's just the feeling of speed is pretty unmatched. And it's one of the few futuristic racers where you don't have a weapon. You have to attack by tackling the other racers, but other than that, like, you don't, you know, recharge your missiles or whatever. And so that really makes it stand out, in my opinion, amongst all the other futuristic racers. So yeah, I would say, yeah, like, there's not been a whole lot like it before or since. Yeah, so I don't know if it qualifies for a Hall of Famer, but yeah, it's definitely one of my picks. And kind of in the same vein, Pikmin 3, I feel like, is a really, really special game. And I don't think that I don't know, Pikmin 1 and 2, as cute as they are, and as, you know, like, they were interesting, but I don't know. Like, I never really loved them, and I feel like 3 is the one where like the franchise finally found its gameplay. They were done with like, oh, now, well, you have to herd these Pikmins and make sure that you don't have stragglers that just, fell down to their faces, and, like, you gotta wait for them. Like, there was a lot of, just managing Pikmin that, out of necessity in the first 2 games, like, you had to manage them because the processor, I guess, the processing power was not strong, strong enough to actually give them, like, very advanced AI. Pikmin 3, found clever ways to, probably, like, I'm assuming that, like, it just gave paths that the Pikmin take around any given level so that they don't get stuck as much as in the first 2 games. Their AI, I'm sure, is also just plain better.
Right.
And the idea of having more than one commander, of course, came from Pikmin 2, but it was really fully realized in Pikmin 3, where it was actually used to solve, like, interesting puzzles and for strategy reasons, which, like, initially, like, Pikmin was touted as a console strategy game, but I never really felt before that it was actually really about strategy. It was kind of a novel way to control, to have like an action game, and like, okay, your little guys are your munitions, but they're also little guys that you control around, sure. But it was not playing like StarCraft, right? But Pikmin 3 was leaning more into like, okay, like if you want to keep all the especially in the downloadable missions, like if you want to keep all the plates spinning perfectly, like you gotta allocate your troops perfectly, and like, okay, these guys go over here, these guys go over here, and then you switch between them, and you make sure that no one's idle. Anyway, like there's something about it that really tickles my brain, and so Pikmin 3 I find kind of came out of nowhere, just because I didn't expect that franchise at that point could surprise me so much, but it did.
It's funny, I was thinking about putting Pikmin 4 on this list because I felt like that was kind of a breakout game for the series. Nintendo certainly seems to think so, because they keep going back and adding things to it.
Yeah. Well, yeah. It's one of the few. It's one of a handful of. Maybe I'm being ungenerous here, but it's one of the handful of Switch games that were not also Wii U games. So, true. Yeah, so it's time. It's the time for those games to actually be added to and updated for the Switch 2.
There you go. Get the Switch 2 version of. Actually, I think they already got a Switch 2 upgrade for that game. So.
There's no
I'm not sure. I don't think so.
Upgrade, I don't think.
Oh,
there was the content stuff. Yeah, there was content. Okay. No, there's content stuff. There's like a new difficulty and some cosmetic
costumes.
Stuff, and but not actually a performance output resolution scenario, as far as I'm aware.
Okay, I thought they had polished it up. Okay, well then, yeah, you're right. That one probably is due. Maybe for a full S2 version, maybe just for an upgrade patch. I'll go out of order here because I have something very similar in that vein. I think it's Animal Crossing New Horizons. And here's my argument. It is not the best Animal Crossing game if you ask Animal Crossing fans. I can already hear them booing me.
Well, and also they spent years trying to summon it with a pentagram or whatever, so like,
they
definitely did. It didn't come out of nowhere. It came out of hell, first of all, and second, very, very much at their bidding.
I talked about it right fucking before COVID hit. I talked about stumbling across a bunch of Tumblr blogs that were people showing off their Animal Crossing dream planning journals before the game came out, where they literally had whole journals that existed entirely for the purpose of planning what they wanted to do in their village. I'm not being facetious when I say the word journal. I mean page after page of like fucking trying to build the spruce goose Like,
I thought he was the killer from Seven, you know, all those plain notebooks with.
Yes. No, I was thinking of like Howard Hughes' obsessive, just completely just devoting his life to the design of this one thing and it being a complete waste of time and energy. But the fervor around that game, of course, is not caused by what they did with the game. It's caused by that game being in the right place at the wrong time. It became a socialization tool for a society that was effectively locked in their homes. I remember distinctly hearing that like the GameStop that the girlfriend got it from, was closed by law. They were not allowed to be open in that state. And because they were not deemed to be, because this is very, very early in the pandemic, they were not deemed to be, critical. This is video games. They got around it specifically for the pre-orders of that game by distributing them in the parking lot. So they never technically opened, which is weird. Actually, that wasn't her that told me that. That was somebody else in another state that had the same problem. I can't remember how hers handled it, but there was explicitly like multiple people told me about how it basically flouting state law to get this game in people's hands, despite the fact this is a fully digital purchasable game. And like, it became the thing. It became the thing that people were using to get through the pandemic isolation. There were literally fucking talk shows with celebrities being hosted in it. It's a completely inscrutable thing that will never make sense to people who didn't live through it. And even to us, 6 years hence, thinking back on it, it doesn't make a lot of sense. But in the moment when it was happening, it made total sense. It was like, yeah, no, I totally get why this game is being this thing right now. It's kind of like why another example of how that whole period sort of changed how people consume media. It caused a lot of people who were into streaming, not like the big names that were already established, but it caused a lot of people to, one, start looking at people who stream, and two, audiences to explode for people that were interesting, because it was a kind of a socialization. There's chat, you could interact with people in it, you could interact with the streamer, and like it definitely caused a spike in those services. Animal Crossing had the same thing happen. And it was, like I said, right place, wrong time is probably the best way to word it, because it wasn't, I don't want to say it was the right time, because that time sucked. But it more than its predecessors, even if you like its predecessors more, maybe you're a Wild World fan. Maybe you're, what was the DS game called? DS was Wild World, wasn't it?
I believe it was, yeah.
Yeah, we was City Folk, or Let's Go to the City
New
if you're
Leaf
European.
would be 3DS. So.
New Leaf is 3DS, yeah. But it's not the GameCube N64 game, because that game basically never sold copies. The DS game sold really well, actually. It did. But it didn't do this. It didn't become a cultural phenomenon. It was still a weird side project.
And New Leaf was really big relative to the 3DS, kind of
correct
imprint, because obviously 3DS, it sold a good amount of systems in the end, but it was a struggle to get there. Animal Crossing was one of those ones that did relatively very, very well.
Yeah.
A little bit like how Splatoon, selling inexplicably kind of well, considering it was a Wii U game at the rump of a hugely unsuccessful generation. Is that you kind of said it had absolutely nothing going in its favour, but it was relatively successful, and it was like a hint of like, if you give this better room to run, it's platform. Really going to do something.
Is Splatoon on your list?
Splatoon's close, I think, because
it was the next one on mine.
I was going to say, I think there wasn't that much. I guess the thing about it is that kind of new Nintendo IP are not so common that it didn't feel, even though it was on a system that we all knew was already doomed, it did feel like it was quite a big deal just for that reason alone.
I have to think about it from a different perspective. I think by the time it came out, it doesn't meet the criteria anymore. I'm thinking of it from the criteria of at the E3 it was revealed and shown. So I met somebody that I had only ever known online previously at that E3. She works in the industry, still does, and we actually met outside Nintendo's booth. It was like the last day of the show. I had already done Nintendo's booth like twice. I had used my press credentials to get in one time, and we had an appointment another time. They had actually devoted an entire corner of their booth to Splatoon. They had this big, like, multi-setup PlayStation, play setup. So lots of people could play, and you could have, I think there were like 2 active games going at one time, which required Wii U consoles for each player in those games. So it was a lot of units. And they obviously felt like it was very important. But she hadn't played it. So I got us in there and she played it and we talked about it for a while. And it was kind of this thing people were murmuring about at that E3. Like it wasn't the most important game at Nintendo's booth that year. I can't remember what was the one they were it might have been Smash. No, the years don't line up for that. I can't remember, but they had a game they were featuring much more prominently in the booth and it was sort of relegated to its corner. But it definitely picked up a lot of steam from people just rotating through that demo kiosk. Cause like if they hadn't played it, they were just like, what the fuck was that? And a lot of times I was talking to people and they'd be like, did you play that thing? What is it? And I'd be like, you just need to go play it. I can't really explain it to you. Just go play it. And they would play it and they'd come back and go, oh, I get it now. I'm like, yeah, like, could you explain it? And they're like, no, but I get it. So maybe not when it came out because Nintendo put a lot of marketing power behind it. But in that moment, in that like 3-day window, it went from just kind of like weird thing Nintendo showed during their direct to thing people were lining up for that earlier in the week you could have just walked up to. And that's kind of a good metric. I mean, E3 doesn't exist anymore, but that was kind of a good barometer for something having its word of mouth moment where like on, was it Tuesday? I think it was Tuesday was the first day of the show. You could just walk right up to it and play it. And like there was no line. You just got in there. And then by Thursday, the last day of the show, there's a line and maybe they've even cut the line off for the end of the show because the show ended earlier on the last day. There's not a lot of times that really happens. I remember it happened with, what was that game? The game where you just put words on the DS.
Scribblenauts,
yeah. Like, I distinctly recall that being a thing, but Scribblenauts was super weird because if you were inside that E3, you didn't hear about it. It was echoing outside the E3 from people putting video out there. Like this was something that was blowing up more inside Splatoon than it was outside. It was when we got out and started talking about it that it became more of a thing. In the moment, it was sort of just like an internal, what's going on with this game? You need to go play it right now. So yeah, like by the time it came out, Nintendo knew what they had. I feel like they did, and they put the muscle behind it because they had to. They didn't have anything else. But it was like I mean, it literally came from nowhere. It came from we've got this mechanic, but we don't want to put Mario in it. I mean, it was literally we don't have a thing to put in it. What should we put in it? But yeah, it's a weird one. Greg, do you have any more? I've got one more I want to touch on.
Sure, yeah. I think for me, I mean, it's not a million miles away from the kinds of examples we've already given. It's not something that's like necessarily got the biggest popular sort of recognition. It is more personal, but it's a little closer to Xenoblade in that it at least spawned a series. But, the original Rhythm Tengoku, again, not localized, because this was in the period where, the sort of transition to DS was basically complete in the minds of the Western branches of Nintendo. It's just like, okay, we're going to pretty much just push on full steam ahead with the DS. It's doing well enough. We can drop the third pillar pretense and just, kind of get on with it. But meanwhile, some games, were getting released still, for GBA in Japan. Basically it was just kind of a bit of a fluky kind of thing. My dad was going out there on business and I was like, oh, you know, I've read some reviews of some games that just came out on GBA, in Japan, you know, he'd got me some like N64 stuff when he'd been out there years earlier. Otherwise I said, well, you know, GBA is a lot easier to bring back than like the cute little boxes that they're in. So, you know, yeah, not like I'd read the reviews and thought, God, I must have it. It's incredible. Like not even to the same extent with Sin and Punishment, where, you know, some of those reviews, even though they were very positive, were like hedging a bit in terms of the value proposition. But it's like what they were talking about sounded really appealing as somebody who loves stuff like Contra. But, you know, in this case, it's just kind of, oh, it's this quirky game. Some of the reviews seem to think that's quite good, and I think, you know, I put in for a couple of the bit generation games as well, like Dot Stream and Orbital, where it's like, you know, just like small reviews in magazines and online that were like, oh yeah, these are cool things that are Japanese, you know, GBA markets getting that we're not. I didn't necessarily have many expectations of like, oh, it's going to be, you know, like something you really, really love. But then when I did get Rhythm Tengoku, I went all the way in on it, you know, eventually getting the perfects on each individual song, you know, game, wherever you kind of categorize it. So I was not expecting that at all. Like I said, the coverage was there, you know, it existed, but it wasn't like it was some huge deal or so, you know, it was just, really did very quickly go for, and to be honest, I'd not played a lot of music games, which this, you know, Rhythm Tengoku is kind of its own thing. It's not a typical rhythm game, you know, like with a note highway and you're getting, you know, a kind of, letter grade or a score, you know, that kind of corresponds with that on a really granular kind of level like that. You know, they are, you know, these particular kinds of games. It's got that root in WarioWare as well, you know, but I actually hadn't played a lot of WarioWare at that time, so I wasn't that sort of steeped in, you know, what the implications of that, you know, that lineage and all that. So it really did just take me by surprise, loved it. And then of course it spawns a series that does get localized, and I played a lot of those, especially I think probably the Wii game is my favorite, but the original is very, very good. You know, they nailed it pretty much straight away, you know, but more so, you know, for instance, than, you know, I think Guillaume, you know, makes a fair point about like Pikmin. You know, it probably was the third one where they actually, you really got it down, you know, like capitalized on the potential of the concept that they'd come up with. Whereas here they got it straight away. It's just like you could say, well, the GBA isn't the best for the, you know, the sound quality and stuff. It's a bit scratchy or something, but it totally works. Yeah, you know, and the simplistic kind of personality of the graphics and all that, it's not an issue. So I think it's right up there, that original Rhythm Tengoku, with my favourites. And then lastly, I think one thing, I don't think it quite qualifies in the same way, but I did kind of want to make this point just because it seems really hard to reconcile with what an enormous thing it is today. But the original Smash Brothers, especially if you were importing it like me before it got to the US, you think, well, it's like all the fucking Nintendo characters fighting each other. How is this not a big deal? It wasn't. It was just kind of, again, a lot of N64 games, you were waiting and waiting and waiting. You read about them in the magazine again and again and again. It was a much shorter build-up with Smash Brothers. It was kind of low-key for a while, and you saw some screenshots, and it didn't look that hot in the screenshots, and it was kind of difficult to explain, I think. You know, well, it's a fighting game, but it doesn't work like regular fighting games. You're going to have to bash people off the stage, and there's a percentage that goes up, but it's not a health bar. Like, it was weird. And then, yeah, when I actually kind of took the chance on it a little bit, because again, it was expensive, and it was basically, well, there's no single play of any real substance. You know, it's just a simple arcade thing and all that. It was you're shocking just how much I liked it straight away. And of course, it spawns, you know, a lot of stuff. The thing with that is, again, it's like if you're putting a Smash Brothers game in the Hall of Fame, it's not the first one, because they, you know, executed on the concept much, much better with subsequent games. Melee, you know, obviously was a huge leap forward. But it was still, again, just like amazing how this thing that seems like it should be the biggest like crossover huge thing in the world actually just kind of snuck up on me and shocked me with how much fun it was.
I've got one more, and I'll go through it quickly. Yakuza 0. And it's not the first Yakuza game to come out in the West, obviously, because it's a prequel. In fact, we'd had 5 of them at that point, and I'd played 4 and 5 by the time 0 came out. But you have to keep in mind, I was on like the advanced edge of this thing, and that's not like the most advanced edge. People played these games back on PS2 when they were dubbed, and they renamed characters for some reason because the characters' names were too similar sounding to Western ears, or they perceived them as that. But Yakuza 0 was the point where this series went from a thing where people would talk about it with each other and be like, yo, you guys need to play Yakuza 4. What the fuck is this shit? It's crazy. And then nobody would do it, to people winning a turkey dinner, at bowling for bowling a turkey, only to be given a live chicken, and then for the woman who gave you the live chicken to be surprised that it's a live chicken, and for you to also be surprised, and then for her to explain, well, we don't have any turkeys and I don't know how to cook. And so the answer is, well, why don't I just take him with me and make him the vice president of my company? And that whole interchange, that whole series of events, went on Twitter before it became a hell site. Or it was a different kind of hell site. And it blew up. And Yakuza 0 became this sort of inflection point from which the series became a huge international seller. Nagoshi got a check written for him by a Chinese publisher that let him leave Sega and some other people. He left the company he basically was running. And that series became huge. I mean, fucking enormous, huge. And we got like 4 more of them, and they went and remade a whole bunch of them, and they're still remaking them. And we got the one that's based in like a very, very hyper-specific period of Japanese history, starring real people having been cast as the characters from the game series, and then like requires you have some base knowledge of that particular era of the pre-Meiji restoration. It's like, what? What the fuck? This series, like, doesn't get to where it got without Yakuza 0. Even though Yakuza 0 isn't really doing that much different than Yakuza 5. Yakuza 5 is weirder in a lot of ways. Now, it doesn't have as much, like, show up for the camera weirdness, because Yakuza 0 was at least semi-aware of what it was doing. Because it was a new game as well. But Yakuza 5 is weird as shit. Yakuza 5 is weird as... one of the main characters is a former baseball player who now reviews the sexual services of massage parlors in a magazine about that. That's his job. And he might be the most normal character you play as. That's where you're at in this weird ass thing. You play as an idol, and instead of fighting, you dance at people and have dance-offs. It's so weird. But 0 was the inflection point. 0 was the point where it went for like a game of for people who have a weird obsession with Japanese culture and are willing to put up with this incredibly odd inflection of it, to a game for a wide audience and a series that has a broad following. It was completely different. Like, for that, where that series was before and after Yakuza 0 is completely fucking different. And it is absolutely attributable to the coverage that game generated of itself through its own acts of weirdness and through social media being in the right place, right time. And it didn't just change that series. It had an impact on Sega. It had an impact on the people who were working on that series. It created opportunities for people who worked on those games but no longer are employed at Sega, because this gave them the opportunity to not be employed by Sega, which is probably a good decision in general if you have the opportunity to change your status from Sega employee to not Sega employee, because that's a weird ass fucking company. And yeah, it's it has to qualify. Like, it has to qualify. It was a huge seller. It was a weird inflection point for a series. It basically reboots the series, and it causes it to become, I think we're now on, I don't think they're calling it Kiwami 3, but we're effectively getting the third Kiwami game, which means we'll be at the halfway point of all the games having a remake. And
yeah, it's called Kiwami 3.
Oh, it
Dark
is? Okay.
Paths is the...
Dark Paths, okay.
Yeah.
And 6 and 7 don't need remakes because they came, and 8 because they came out on modern systems. Also, 6 is weird, bro. 6 is so fucking weird. I can't even begin to, I just can't. So yeah, like, it transformed that series in a very big and potent way. And like, I don't think we get the like detective games either, because why would Sega make them? Like, it made those games popular outside Japan, which made those games more marketable, which meant they could spend more money on them. Knowing your audience, man. And knowing your audience, even if your audience doesn't know they're your audience yet. I also think digital distribution helped that, because the thing about Yakuza 4, when I wanted to play it, it was really fucking hard to find a copy. It was really hard to find a copy. When I bought Yakuza 0, it wasn't super hard. It was physical. I bought it new. I bought it when it just came out. But if you came late to the party and the limited copies that Sega shipped were gone, you could just go on your system of choice and say, I would like to download this, please. And by the way, if you haven't played Yakuza 0, you should probably download it. It's on Switch. It's pretty good. It's pretty fucking good. And weird as hell. Okay, we're going to take a break here. When we come back, we're going to do something else. I'll tell you what it is when we get back. Later. We are... That clap was really nice. That clap was really nice. We're back with some more listener mail. For those of you who might hear me talk about how that clap was bad and that clap... We use the clap to sync the audio tracks. Sometimes Discord is not that interested in giving us each other's audio relatively close to the time in which we actually say things, so the claps feel really out of sync. That one was really nice. Which means this audio is going to be synced as fuck. The first clap today wasn't that good. So that was, yeah, that's nice. That's a good clap. We're going to do another email, and then we're going to talk a little bit about the Nintendo announcements that popped up. We might do a second email depending on how long this one takes. We'll try to spend a little bit less time on it, but I'll read it. Dan from Canada writes, hey guys, what are the most egregious examples of missing games on NSO? Games that are seemingly have no license issues, no emulation or controller input / online Smash Bros. 64, or localization controversy, Mother 3. Sincerely, someone who wanted to play Wario Land 1 and 2 and did not realize they're still not on the service after 3 years. Also the same person who was a huge Lolo fan, and Lolo 2 and Lolo 3 are MIA after 7 years.
No, I should have read this postscript before I took notes, because, Adventure of Loto 2 and 3 are on my list, and Wario Land 1, but I forgot that 2 was not on there also.
I'm actually fascinated by the concept of a huge Adventures of Lolo fan. That is a phrase I never thought I would read with my mouth, and yet here we are, and I have done it.
Adventure of Loto 1 and 2 were on the Wii VC, the Virtual Console.
Yeah.
And then only the first one was on the Wii U VC. And I played for sure the first one. I think maybe I played the second one. They were fun games,
yeah,
but they're
just not that well known.
No, but still, like, I can understand wanting to, like, these games exist. They're by, Hal, who have a very close relationship with Nintendo. Very close.
Quest for Camelot is on the fucking service, for fuck's sake. Come on.
Yeah, so there's really no real reason why these games are not on the service.
Why is Quest for Camelot on the service?
No, that's the problem, isn't it? I guess defining egregious in this context.
Right.
If you use the bar of the Quest for Camelot, like virtually everything one could think of that would have any potential appeal seems egregious by its absence when that
like
is
it kind of rules out this game is not notable enough. Yeah, but what about Quest for Camelot?
Yeah,
good point.
Unfortunately, while understandable, I think that'll have to be a standard we don't apply in this case.
This is not meant to serve as a recommendation article, although it isn't clear the site still produces that content format. I could conceivably do the most punk rock thing imaginable and do one anyway. But if I do engage in such an act of teen rebellion, it will not be part of this article. This is meant to serve as a manifesto. This is the kind of article crudely hewn on an IBM Selectric by a person driven mad by modern society. It makes a philosophical proclamations dripping with sophistry and delusions of grandeur. I, unlike those people, am fully in possession of my faculties, the most clear-eyed in the darkness of modern society. Quest for Camelot is a fraud, and failing to denounce it, you help perpetuate it. This is what that fucking game made me write after 2 hours. What an absolute fucking shit show of a product. And it's on the service for some reason.
Yeah. But I gotta say, I mean, especially because we had the reminder that the Virtual Boy games are just a matter of weeks away, and they confirmed that Virtual Boy Wario Land is going to be one of the launch games on I think it's the 17th, is it, of February or whatever. If barring something very sudden, it is absolutely bonkers that we're going to have Wario World and Virtual Boy Wario Land on NSO before
You're right.
1 and 2.
You're right.
Bonkers.
Other great phrases. This is the late middle-aged depiction of famine as a skeletal rider on a horseback in game form. There we go. That's Quest for Camelot. Congratulations. Jesus Christ.
You know, the thought-provoking.
I think it beat the Oracle games. To the service.
Yeah. No, well, I guess, there was some question about, the Oracle games. Maybe it will because, maybe they won't show up because, there'll be remakes, like the Link's Awakening one or something,
But then we got Link's Awakening, so fuck that.
Yeah, no, exactly. And this is the point, again, if you're trying to reach a standard of, like, what's quite egregious or what's understandable, by contrast, some of it does go into like, okay, well, might they want to do something else with that particular game, or, again, the license issues, or, the publishers, and what's been on, forerunners to NSO in terms of, virtual consoles. As Guillaume already pointed out, sometimes there's been discrepancies across the different iterations of virtual console, right? Like a particular series, you've had like multiple sequels come out on virtual console in one case, like on Wii, for instance, but they're not on 3DS and Wii U. That's quite a common kind of thing. So, yeah, or indeed the reverse. Sometimes, like the sequels finally showed up, on later editions of Virtual Console. So we've had some of those kinds of things to try and guide us over the years. I think for me, that's why the simplicity of this first example is just like it's been on Virtual Console before, and it's sandwiched in between two things that not only were on Virtual Console before, but are on NSO presently. And that would be Gargoyle's Quest 2 for NES.
Yes.
Because the first Gargoyle's Quest is there on Game Boy, Demon's Crest, for Super Nintendo is there, and Gargoyle's Quest 2 itself was on, at least I believe, Wii U Virtual Console, for instance, maybe 3DS as well. I think it was in that generation rather than the Wii generation that it showed itself. But, it's a pretty cool game. It does have a lot in common with the Game Boy game, but it benefits from being in colour. It benefits from, in particular, the larger visible play area around Firebrand, with the higher resolution of an NES game, right? So, is Demon's Crest a more sophisticated and more interesting and certainly more rich looking and sounding game? Yes. But Gargoyle's Quest 2 does still have its own sort of merits, and it doesn't seem logical to me that this should be left out when the other two are available. It doesn't suggest that they're sitting on something for a Makai Mura spin-off collection or anything like that. I mean, it's just plonk it in the middle. It's just waiting to happen.
We're going to get a Capcom The Leftovers collection with like that and Street Fighter 2010 or something.
The Has No Legacy collection.
Right.
Perhaps.
Go ahead.
Oh no! I've got a list I can go through.
Okay. I was going to note that there's another one that's very much like this, where I was going to go in system by system. It feels like Game Boy we've actually done pretty well relative to what was on the original system, with a handful of like really odd exceptions. Namely, like we don't have any of the Pokemon games. You know, that'd be really cool.
Yeah.
We have Pokemon the trading card game, which was on the service, but beyond that, like,
well, I mean, with this being, it'll be, you know, just a matter of weeks away now when they do a Pokemon Presents for the, you know, every year they do one for Pokemon Day, the anniversary at the end of February of the release of the original, you know, Pokemon Red and Green in Japan. You know, if we're ever going to get any movement on that front, you would think it'd be now. Basically, you know, this is the big 30th anniversary year for the franchise. So it would seem like if you were going to get Virtual Console, Switch Online, you know, just not fancy remakes, or they've certainly done that plenty of times. Even, you know, just on Switch, we had the Let's Go, Eevee and Pikachu, which were your Gen 1 games. But if you wanted to bring them back one more time in their original forms, this anniversary would seem like the time to do it. No idea whether they will do that. They certainly made a belated appearance on 3DS Virtual Console, because it kind of felt like basically the Game Boy games had stopped on Virtual Console at that point, because of course, again, it was on the 20th anniversary. It was 10 years ago. And at that point, you know, the eShop had been around for, you know, 5 years or whatever. You know, they'd kind of gone through the Game Boy library. There wasn't a lot happening there. You know, some of the other consoles and, you know, product lines at that point, there was more. But then all of a sudden, you know, red and blue and the yellow as well. You know, the Pikachu edition came with an enhanced functionality. It actually had the link cable, like kind of emulation, you know, to build for multiplayer and stuff, didn't it? So that was a bit of an upset 10 years ago for me. I kind of felt like, well, you know, they're not going to do it like that. It's not, you know, that they too invested in remakes and stuff, you know, like to do just like a Virtual Console style, and then they went ahead and did it.
And they did red blue / red green if you were in Japan, and they did yellow, and then they did gold and silver. Like they actually went to the well a bunch of times. The well is completely untapped here. So
I mean, they could put, like, it's this bit of a cheat because it's not the 30th anniversary of these games, but they could do Fire Red and Leaf Green for the GBA remakes of that generation on the GBA part of the service.
They should do both. Like do them all. Screw it. Like, let's go. Like, make Pokemon Bank work. I think they're missing a Donkey Kong game in there too, but like those are the, like, I went through the whole game with the exception of the Mega Man ones, which I assume is a Capcom thing. Like, I don't know that anybody's aching to play Mega. In fact, the original Mega Man on Game Boy was never on the Virtual Console because it sucks. It's terrible.
Yeah, but they're all there
we have them on NSO though.
Yeah, they actually went and put them all. Yeah, they went ahead and put all of the. Well, was it 1 to 6? Is it 6 or is it 5? Game Boy games 5. That's right.
Really?
5 is the one that's like mostly original stuff, right? Like the others are kind of cobbled together.
And all of these were on the 3DS Virtual Console. But yeah, now
that's what I'm talking about. So I see them on the 3DS Virtual Console, but I'm looking at the NSO list on Nintendo's website, and they are not there.
Oh, but they're very much there. I've played some of them.
Nintendo's own website's not accurate.
You'll see the box arts wherever you boot up the app.
What the fuck?
That was a little bit of an upset because you think it could put it in a collection or something.
Are the extreme games on there?
No, that's what I was going to say. No. Like, that's what's missing. The extreme games made it to the 3DS Virtual Console.
They sure did, because I bought them.
They're not on the NSO yet.
Okay. Like, it's very funny to me that Nintendo's Game Boy Classics webpage is missing at least 5 games then. That's amazing. Like, now I don't trust anything. I don't trust anything, Nintendo. Come on. You got Alone in the Dark, the new Nightmare on here, but you can't tell me about Mega Man? It's fucking Mega Man, man.
Before we moved on from Pokemon games, like, if you're not going to put the mainline games on there, Pokemon Pinball, Like
Pinball,
they did,
yeah, definitely.
Pinball.
Oh,
they
yeah.
did bring the both the GBA and the GBC versions to 3DS Virtual Console. So I don't know what the holdup would be here. It just makes sense. They're good pinball games, and they've got that gotta catch 'em all gimmick attached to them, and so
I wonder if maybe they're trying to do the vibration stuff. If that's something they're going to save and be like, I made your Switch vibrate when you play it.
But can't they do that very easily anyway? Like, I mean, like they're already. I'm kind of always
Do
amazed.
any Game Boy games have that?
Well,
they've done definitely. I mean, like for instance, there were GBA games that had force feedback for your Game Boy Player, and that's emulated on the Game Boy, like Mario and Luigi Superstar Saga, for instance. And I mean, you think about stuff like Kirby Tilt and Tumble, like that was a game.
I'm not saying that it should be hard. I'm just saying maybe that's what they're sitting on it for. Maybe they're like, we did.
Like I said, there's so many reasons that could be. You're playing a factor that's that you're just guessing, aren't you? Why some of this stuff is truly baffling. Like, I mean, speaking of pinball, isn't like do they not have Revenge of the Gator on there? I don't think they do.
They don't.
Which is like
no.
Again, but you guess you could say, well, Kirby's Pinball Land is more sophisticated, or this, that, and the other. But it's like it was a kind of important game early on for Game Boy.
The whole purpose of this service is just jam shit out there so we can see it.
Yeah, you want the pipeline, right? So it's like I don't get why Revenge of the Gator isn't there. It was a significant in those days, a launch lineup. Pinball, you kind of had to have it, right? Like that was just part of you had to have a certain amount of sports games, you had to have a certain amount of platformers, you had to have just arcade experiences, you were shoot 'em up or something. Pinball was part of the package to show that it's this is a console that has a variety of experiences that you expect from a platform, and Revenge of the Gator for an early pinball game was pretty cool.
I mean, and like we said, you can put anything on this service. There's a game that we just talked about where I had to write a paragraph about how the fonts are so bad that you can't read the game's answers. Like, come on, put Revenge of the Gator on there, please.
Super Mario Brothers Deluxe is missing.
Oh yeah. That
I had
was,
that as a note.
That was weirdly handled originally, right? Though, wasn't it like a sort of promo thing for? At least it was in Europe. I think it was like you could get it.
Oh, maybe
either for free or like a discount if you did something or bought something else. I can't remember. It wasn't just like a straight up purchase from the eShop, at least at first. But then it was definitely did exist in virtual console form. But I mean, you've had other weird things like that. Do you remember the ROM hack of NES Donkey Kong? Where it was like called Original Edition or whatever, and it actually put the Cement Factory level in there. And for a while, I think that was like bundled in if you bought a Wii, like a particular SKU of Wii at the time. But then later on, you could just buy it on there's been some peculiar elements with that. But for me, I look at things again that are very unlikely to be monetized another way. Those are the ones that are the most egregious, right? We could talk about something like Chrono Trigger, right? It's like that would be people want to play that again
some other way.
But we've spoken about, goodness knows how many times, is probably something that's at least of enough significance and esteem, among Square's own kind of staff and all that, to feel like, no, we think we could do more with that. Obviously, they just had a big 30th anniversary that went by with not a lot happening. I think there was like a concert just recently in Japan that they've got like a CD album of orchestrations coming out of that concert, but that's like about it at this point. Of things that came out of the 30th anniversary of Chrono Trigger, but these things can kind of roll on for a while. Obviously, I mean, technically we're past the Super Mario Brothers anniversary, the 40th, but they're going to keep kind of plugging things, with that logo and everything, like the Switch 2 edition of Wonder, right? That DLC or whatever.
Oh yeah.
So maybe we'll see more, but you could, with that, it's like, I would dearly love to have the true, as accurate as the emulation allows anyway, honest to God original version of Chrono Trigger just on my NSO app. I would like that very much, but I do understand, why it isn't. I'd be even more understanding if they actually fucking did anything with it anytime soon before I'm dead, but, we'll see. But the more sort of egregious in a way is the stuff where it's like, yeah, you're not going to do anything else with this. And I've said plenty of times, Konami shoot 'em up on the Super Nintendo, Axley, very cool game. Super Nintendo was a little bit shooter poor because of it had disadvantages, right? With the the slow speed of the processor didn't really allow it to compete with Genesis and even TG16, which was really the sort of shooter heaven in the Japanese market. You couldn't have the fast pace so much, and that was where a lot of the genre kind of was at that time. But, Axley is a more deliberate game, and it's kind of more about presentation. It's got a little bit like a Life Force situation where you've got horizontal levels, you've got vertical levels, and it's got a Mode 7 roll-in log kind of effect thing going on with the vertical ones for a bit of faux 3D, jazz it up a little bit. But, underneath all the presentational stuff, it's just I kind of like slower pace shooters because they are, in a very real sense, more my speed. I can cope with them more. Not to say that it makes it easy, because I don't think it is, but it's a pretty cool, thoughtful shoot 'em up game that is not part of any other series, so it's not really going to be in a collection. There wasn't an arcade game, there wasn't a sequel. It's just this standalone thing that was cool, and I don't know how else it would come back. It was on previous Virtual Console, so why the hell isn't it just there?
I will say, I think I'm running out of games to mention, except maybe like Mole Mania.
I've got a bunch. So by all means, finish up.
That was really good. I played that on the Virtual Console for 3DS. I like that.
Yeah, it's a Miyamoto joint, I'm pretty sure.
Yes.
Why it's not on here, who knows? But I feel like I do want to mention how impressed I am, even scrolling through games right now on the service, how many games they do have. And, stuff that I probably didn't expect to show up at this point, like Journey to Silius, like that came out a long time ago on the NSO, but like that's kind of a Sunsoft I don't know, hidden gem maybe, or well-liked by some people game. At the very least, it's got a good story behind it, right? With the fact that it was originally meant to be a Terminator game, and then they had to change it because they lost the license. Anyway, so lots of good stuff, but when you mentioned James, maybe they're waiting to be able to put the kind of force feedback into Game Boy games. Where's my WarioWare Twisted? I think we're due now.
I wonder if that game is so intimately, because look, the Kirby Tilt and Tumble barely fucking functions. I would argue that WarioWare Twisted actually functions super well, and maybe that one just hasn't translated.
In its original form, it did work really well. I like the whole sort of thing they built into it of like these increments with the clicks, right? The force feedback created these clicks, so it was kind of, as you were tilting it, it didn't feel. Some of this is the kind of psychological, maybe more than purely practical, but it didn't feel like you were just waving it around kind of indiscriminately. It felt like you was going through distinct increments of, twist. And it just really worked with again, it helps that the gameplay obviously is really simple, these micro games. But
right.
it all felt like
the force feedback
perfect.
really, like, essentially it told you, like, this is working. So, what you are doing is having an effect.
They worked well together and made it work.
Yeah. Like, it was the best kind of force feedback, where it was, like, telling you, through the shaking or whatever, like, the controls are working the way that you're trying to make them work.
It's informing how you continue to twist it from there. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, it's basically taking the place of button presses. Because, like, in a button, there's a tactile, yes, I have pressed the button. Now, this is their way of trying to give you that same tactile response. I have a list. I focused on, like, basically in doing this, we all did our own platform research. I focused on the N64 because I felt like that's been around a while. And there's some super obvious stuff that, yeah, it should just be there. Like, fuck it. Come on, let's go. And some of them have licenses attached, but they're all licenses that have been solved in the past. With one exception. And that exception is Beetle Adventure Racing. I cannot for the life of me imagine the Volkswagen Corporation is going to be that butthurt about making the license for the Beetle, a vehicle they no longer produce, available for the purposes of a racing game that will make them look good, because that game was actually pretty fucking solid. But Rayman 2, which is the N64 Rayman game, this is the Great Escape. It's been ported to every goddamn system under the earth. I once had a tree.
Oh, wait, but it was in December.
Was it? Fuck.
Yeah, it was very recently, yeah.
Oh, okay. Well,
alongside
shit, never mind then.
It's sort of weird,
Tonic Trouble.
Yeah, Tonic Trouble. It's like development, like sibling, but they ended up coming out relatively close together.
Tonic Trouble. It's fuck. Okay, well that's fine. Again, this might have been website not up to date, catching me yet again.
Well, that was a recent addition. I mean, the Mega Man games were a while ago. That was like December.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
and before you name it, James, Bubsy also came out recently, so I know it's probably on your list.
Did it? Wait, did it really?
Bubsy is playable on the Super Nintendo.
No, Bubsy is never playable. I want to be clear about that. Bubsy is not playable. Bubsy may be on the system, but it is not capable of being played. It is a piece of a garbage. Okay, fine. Fuck it. We're gonna try again. We're gonna see if maybe this one's not on the list. Nah, yeah, it's the list really isn't up to date. Nintendo, update your fucking website. All right, here's another game that I'm just going to speak into existence. Of the rare games, which ones are missing? Diddy Kong Racing is definitely missing.
Yes, yeah.
Is Donkey Kong 64 still missing, or did they release that?
It is, but DK64 is not there. This is subject's come up a few times for me. Again, the blurred out backgrounds from a Nintendo Direct suggested that a few games may be coming in the future, and a couple of them have shown up, right? So, like, Forsaken was one of those, for instance.
Which is a complete reach.
But what's still to come from that lineup would be, or at least in part, Smash Brothers. So whatever difficulties,
which is on my list as well,
having the online function proper, I could, kind of, especially played over any particular distance, like, say, for instance, if I wanted to get a game going with you, James, I don't know how well it would function.
It's going to be bad.
Smash Brothers Online, but, I would still, as I go back to the last segment, I would dearly like to play it again, even if it is just, like, single player, frankly. There's just still something, those are it's not, the best Smash Brothers game, but those memories of playing Smash Brothers for the first time and the impact that it had, I would like to revisit them in that fashion, if possible. But that is probably on the way, and DK64 is probably on the way.
Right.
Diddy Kong Racing, I don't think, was among the blurry background boxes.
It was not. But it should be there. Like, they've already solved Diddy Kong Racing before on the DS. It is a solved problem.
Well, and again, if you've gone to this place where we can have Jet Force Gemini, where we can have Blast Core, where we can have DK64, it would seem nice to have Diddy Kong Racing among those. I know you've got sort of more kind of characters, because it's like Diddy's roster includes people like Conker and Banjo, right, and stuff.
Yeah.
But if you can have the Banjo games, if you can have all this other stuff, you would think that can be done, and probably will be done, right? Yeah, and it's one of these again. I had Diddy Kong Racing at the time. Got quite a lot out of it at that particular time, so it would be interesting to revisit it and see what we make of it today.
put Conquer in the mature 17 plus app for the N64.
That is a thing, and Perfect Dark's there, and all, and so like, why not? Why not put it?
So according to the how each of the services lists what games they have, the mature 17 plus app doesn't show anything. It just mentions Perfect Dark in its description and Turok. All right, so beyond those, beyond the Turoks, which I think is only one Turok right now, we should have all.
They have two. They have two.
Okay, we should have all the Turoks.
They don't. Where's Rage Wars? Eh?
Yeah,
that's it's a multiplayer. Service.
Yeah, it would benefit from the online part of the NSO.
Absolutely. Put them all on there. What about Ogre Battle 64? That was on the service. I called it impossible before it happened, but then it did.
Yeah, well, I mean, that was a virtual console game, because the weird part about that is the Western publisher, right? Because, of course, in Japan, it would be Enix, right? And then, but then elsewhere, it was handled by Atlas. Yeah, so which
is now Sega.
That's a peculiar one, that. Although, I mean, again, I wouldn't say I'm the biggest fan of this game. Certainly, not compared to how much of a fan I am of Sin and Punishment that we talked about in the last segment, but Mischief Makers always surprised me that hasn't been re-released more, because obviously developed by Treasure. In Japan, it was published by Enix, and then elsewhere, was it just published by Nintendo? I forget.
It might have been, yeah.
It's not that far afield, is the point, isn't it? These are companies you think can sort of talk to each other and get it done, but no, not to this point.
They're all in Smash Brothers. Fucking figure it out. There's a whole bunch of Star Wars stuff that we know the licenses have been figured out on. So, like, why aren't the Rogue Squad, Rogue Leader on GameCube, Rogue Squad 2, Battle for Naboo, what was the Dash Rendar's Shadows of the Empire?
Oh yeah, Shadows of the Empire. Yeah.
Episode 1 Racer. Like,
again, obviously with Episode 1 Racer, I mean, there's a version they're selling, like, right.
There is, right, yeah, but so. Like that is a significantly different version in a lot of ways.
Like, look, and I've got to say, it's worth mentioning, to Guillaume's point about just how much stuff is on there. There are plenty of cases where you have a commercial version that exists and you still get it on NSO. We've already talked about those Turok games, right? Like Night Dive have done their versions, which are very good by all accounts. They handle those games really well and bring them up to date and have new, sort of conveniences and whatnot. But you've still got Turok 1 and 2, I believe, in that mature app. So, and Shadow Man as well was another one.
Oh, God.
So it doesn't, the fact that we have Episode 1 Racer other ways does not immediately suggest that you should just, like, write it off entirely.
Yeah, but, like, easily, the 3 Rogue Squads should be there. Across the GameCube and N64, and I would argue Battle for Naboo because it's weird.
Battle for Naboo is interesting just because it was kind of skipped over. It felt like the most, right? Because it was just like the point where the N64 was really kind of at the end of its life.
It's also really weird compared to the others.
Yeah, that's the thing. See, I never got to play it. I didn't own the N64 game, but I had a friend who had it, and I got to play quite a lot of it and watch him play it quite a lot, so I thought I had a pretty good idea about that one. And then, of course, when the second game came out as a launch game for GameCube, that was a huge deal. That was, I've despite having a great affection for the films, I've owned very few Star Wars video games. That's the second Rogue Squadron.
I mean, they trained you not to for a while.
Oh, well, yeah, there were things to avoid, certainly. Although, there were definitely things that got good reviews. The second Rogue Squadron was just like, you couldn't not get that. Like, the reviewed so well.
It looked better than the movie.
It looked so good at the time. Like, you really just thought, like, wow, this. I played and saw enough of the N64 game to be really impressed by it, but the GameCube game just seemed so much better. It was just like, wow, look at this, incredible, and obviously I'm sure if you looked at it in the cold light of day now, it would look, the seams, would be a lot more kind of visible or whatever, but it was so impressive. It would be a cool thing to have on the GameCube app if they could make it work.
Put Star Fox Assault on the service. Fuck it. At least it's different. Like, it's got lots of things that aren't good in it. like the wing walking bullshit, but at least it's a different.
Yeah.
It's,
well, I mean, look, I would.
It's not a remake of Star Fox 64.
We've got to say, if going back to the standard of egregious, I mean, nothing can really meet that for GameCube because the service is like
so
7 months old or whatever.
But they did go kind of weird for their starting lineup. Like there's some deep cuts going in there in the early stuff. Chibi Robo being there almost at the beginning is...
No, I agree with that. It's a mix, isn't it? It's a mix. You got some of the obvious stuff early on, like... I mean, in some ways, Wind Waker is a surprise. I mean, talking about anniversaries, it's the big, the 40th for Zelda this year. And we're all probably... kind of thinking, okay, what products are they going to, there's pretty much Zelda product every year now, the franchise is big enough, and especially you've got the motion picture event of 27, we've got to build up to that. So, there's clearly going to be Zelda product this year. It's a big anniversary. How are they going to, monetize that? How are they going to build that up? And you might have thought, Wind Waker could be, considering, as we've said far too many times, it's never been on a Nintendo system anybody actually had in the mainstream. It's just on the two of the biggest flops that aren't Virtual Boy. But no, they just had that right up front. Get a nice... big third-party game with the Soul Calibur 2 that we covered in the retroactive, and a mix of like obvious and less obvious with things like on the one like Luigi's Mansion. It's a launch title, synonymous with the GameCube to a fair degree, and then Chibi Robo from when the GameCube had kind of pretty much stopped being relevant, but it's this hidden gem kind of thing. Really interesting mix, but I'm sure that will just continue, and hopefully, you'll get your stuff like Wario World, right? It's no masterpiece, but it's interesting for people to go back and look at it for its, weirdness and just what was going on in that generation, like the different kind of stuff that was coming out. And, I would imagine, having not played it myself, the Star Fox Assault would be similar, right?
Yeah, like the GameCube in particular, the games were cheap enough because the N64 games were super expensive to make, just because the cartridge, like the system was cheap enough to physically produce the game for us. We started to get weird shit again, and sometimes really truly odd stuff. We could get Battalion Wars, boys. We could even get Battalion Wars 2 one day if they ever make a Wii one. Someone could finally review Bwee. But like Beach Bikers.
Is the acceptable way Bwee or Bwee?
I like Bwee, but I think either is acceptable. I think we have to open up the door to multiple ways to be
vocalize this very crucial.
Can you just say it like in that tone of voice, or do you have to go like "Bwee"? Or
do you have to turn into a Ubisoft creature?
Exactly.
I think you can, but I'm going to feel bad about it if you do. But like on the GameCube space, there is so much stuff that consistent Nintendo partners could put out. Capcom versus SNK Neo. Like, it's such a weird fucking pull, but I think that would be kind of a neat thing to throw up there, and they're both partners.
I mean, they just did the Capcom sort of fighting collection. Is it 2 or something that's got the SNK, the versus SNK games on it? But that was what the Easy Operation was what the EO stood for, apparently, with that, and it was obviously with the controller and stuff, like fighting games didn't have that much of a natural home on GameCube, but that was a big one, and it was actually it was there.
Well, like, what about Doshin the Giant in all its 50 hertz English glory?
Well, like, I mean, they do, they've allowed the 50 hertz versions of the games, like seemingly, PAL versions of some description or European version of some description do exist on, for N64 and GameCube. So, you've got that, or I don't know whether they could just do some sort of hybrid of, kind of
could they make it
hertz
work?
but keep the localized script, for, for that game in particular, because obviously they could just go on the Japanese service as it came out originally, which again, to be honest, Rhythm Heaven.
I played. Oh yeah.
That we spoke about in the last segment. I mean, if they don't feel confident enough to put that out on as a quote-unquote import game, which to be fair, again, they've done quite a lot of those. They've done import games, right? And left your panelled the ponds and stuff like that, where it's just like, hey, just deal with it. With Rhythm Heaven, you could do that with, I think. But if they didn't, at least put it on the Japanese version of the service like Mother 3, and people could find it that way and still play it, because I did back then. No, absolutely no help or anything, just bungling my way through it, and the gameplay is so, kind of straightforward up front. It's no issue.
Have they done any Mario parties for the GameCube one yet? I would argue the lack of any of them would be egregious, even this early in the because there's so many on that system.
It was a big part of it, but they haven't got there yet. Obviously, they have with the N64 games.
They were annual, for fuck's sake. I mean,
exactly.
These are original. I'm using every air quote that has ever been invented. Original games every single year from coming from inside the house.
Hell, you could even have Mario Party 8, which you use the microphone because
and then you get to Odama, don't you? You get to Odama as well, which is about pinball and the microphone. Now you're talking.
So,
and don't let anybody tell you otherwise. It is egregious that Odama isn't on the NSO. Right, it is
egregious that they took out the bongo controls too. I mean, they should put them back.
That was a development sin that they backed. They should put them back. Cowardice that they did.
Because they didn't want to make legitimately, they didn't want to make the custom plastic clip you would need to put the microphone on the drums without interfering from the sound of the drums. It's like, what the fuck are you talking about? This is a terrible idea. You absolute... bring it back. Bring it back.
Well, what's funny is that back when I owned Jungle Beat on the GameCube, I had the bongos, and one of my roommates called me a coward for pressing down the buttons in the bongo instead of tapping. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're right. They're right.
No, that's how I played Jungle Beat with the bongos, and that's how I played it. I couldn't bring myself to actually slap them
I drummed the shit out of it. I've always lived in apartments. Wild.
I've got neighbors, James.
Become the main character, Guillaume. That's the answer. Just ignore anyone else. It's just you and the bongos and groovin'. The GameCube is really interesting. Like I feel like that's where I want to see weird stuff. I want to see Sega Soccer Slam. Like I'd love Soccer Slam to come back. And again, I mean, it's like I don't know how else it would. You know what I mean? It's like there's definitely overlap with Strikers, what Mario Strikers became, but it's different. Like it plays the different perspective. It's what you're going up the field, up and down, rather than across side to side. And it's got some like hockey kind of influences in like the keepers have like a bunch of pads on, and you can kind of like wear it down. You like break the keeper's armor over time, and then it becomes easier to score. So it definitely got some of those same features of because I think some of the developers ended up like that worked on Soccer Slam maybe broke away and formed Next Level after that, I want to say. So it's not like a direct line, but there's definitely some overlap, and in both cases you can kind of see some hockey DNA in there. But it's as I recall, it's been obviously more than 20 years since I've touched it, but that it had its own kind of appeal that's separate from what Strikers became, so it would be worthwhile to have it. And again, if you're looking for games that actually have online play to add to it, it's a good call. I guess the only thing you'd say is they did put the original Strikers on there relatively early, so if it were to come, it might be something a lot later. Give me Tube Slider. There, I don't know. Fuck it. Like I can't even get the joke out and to be like, I don't fucking need that. Like it's a very kind of a weird system because there's a lot of stuff that's just stuff. It was the multi-platform stuff, which we're not used to for Nintendo systems, but like Beautiful Joe stuff would be good. Even Virtua Quest, which is bad. It's bad, but it's unique. And there's definitely no way to make money off Virtua Quest. Ain't nobody gonna pay to play as a child pretending to be a Virtua Fighter character.
Again,
it's just not going to happen.
With a lot of the Capcom stuff, you might say, well, the odds are against, Resident Evil 4 or even Resident Evil 0, that are coming back, on the service there in their original forms, because they're selling those games all the time, have been on Switch, and they'll keep selling them, and it will probably get like the remake of Resident Evil 4 on Switch 2 before too long.
Just today I was asking Soren about is there like anything that would prevent Nintendo from releasing Eternal Darkness on the service, and apparently there's no rights issue. Like Nintendo has all of them. So
and again, they could use the same playbook as we already mentioned the N64 they did, right, where you have a separate app that has the mature rating on it, and it probably wouldn't end up with that many games in it, but it keeps
Eternal Darkness, Geist. What else do you need?
Yeah, not much. And you can keep it sort of neat and tidy, I guess. And also to skim a little bit off that download size, I suppose, because it's only going to get bigger as the service increases. So, and that's certainly one that's, kind of synonymous with the GameCube, that early period. But I was going to say, a little bit like my Axlay example, PN3. Like, when's that going to come back? And again, it's not great. I think Axlay is quite a lot better game than PN3.
Axlay is a game. PN03 is a
product. Literally product number 3. That's what it is. To fulfill a contractual obligation. But, it's not like without interest. I think I owned a copy.
No, it's weird.
I owned a copy because it was really, the Japanese version was really cheap. They must have overproduced that, something fierce.
I bought my copy for $4 or something like that.
I played it, and it's an interesting kind of, again, it's not a finished game. It's the reality. It really is very rough around the edges, but it's kind of interesting, and that's the sort of thing that it's like, you're not Capcom. Well, you ain't going to do anything else with this. You know what I mean? We're not going to get the deluxe 4K version with the Vanessa Schneider amiibo or whatever. We're not.
No, I want the Vanessa. Shut up! I want the Vanessa Schneider amiibo.
But the first one ever with like motorized bum wiggle or whatever.
Right. I was going to say, make it articulated.
For 1 second, I wouldn't buy that amiibo. No, it's 100%.
But, the fact is, you could be on a service like that. That's again. It's a weird thing to say because it's not going to meet most people's definition of egregious at all. These weird little games that by definition, the publisher of said game has no particular imperative to give a shit about. But those are the ones that kind of frustrate me the most because it's just you aren't going to do anything else with this. So do this. But I mean, the reality of it is two to tango, right? Presume a lot of the time we heard this from Square Enix with regard to Live Alive, right? That Nintendo came to them saying, can we do Live Alive on NSO? And then that led to the HD 2D version being made, as a complete, and Live Alive very much not showing up on NSO. So, again, Nintendo's got to have a reason and maybe that's you could blame them. They're not saying, hey, Konami, give us Axlay. It is there for, I don't know. But,
like, do you think legitimately Activision, the international publisher, or From Software, the developer / domestic publisher, is ever going to get off their ass and do anything with Lost Kingdoms 1 or 2? Absolutely not. But the idea of Nintendo saying, hey, we've got 2 From Software games from the early 2000s, you want to see them? I think has some appeal because From Software is a much bigger name now than they were in 2002 and 2005, I think, when that game came out. Oh god, it was 2002, 2003. Shit, those are fast. And they're weird, unique, and they're definitely never going to get touched. So like, it feels like that's the kind of stuff where you could stick it out there and do it. Or Killer 7. Is Capcom really going to get off their ass and make Killer 7 4K? No. You know why? Because they'd have to call up Grasshopper Manufacture, and they don't want to deal with that. They don't want to deal with Suda. Nobody wants to deal with Suda. Nintendo had them at their own press conference when they announced the Switch and they didn't want to deal with Suda. Like, it's no. So just do it. Just port it and be done with it. And then move on to important things like the Italian job, the game. God, I can't, like, this is sort of the end of the licensed games, and the shit that got licensed games is...
So is that like for the remake movie, right?
Yes.
Right, because there
minis.
was also, like, post GTA 3, there were also a bunch of old movies that got games, right? Like, 80 Scarface and The Godfather, and, so I guess it wasn't entirely impossible that they could have done something about the Michael Caine movie.
This was for the remake. Was that a Pierce Brosnan movie? No, that was...
I don't. Thomas Crown Affair was Tom.
Yeah, that was the remake of that. Yes, no, this is a different one. Yeah, but yes, this is the remake. Arguably they did nothing with Crystal Chronicles when they remade it, so why don't they just put the good version out? The connectivity stuff is kind of an interesting area, isn't it? Like, is that more trouble than it's worth? Or, because I mean, some of those, like properly playing Four Swords Adventures sounds like a really cool idea, you know what I mean? Like, because again, how many people actually had the equipment to play that game to its fullest? I got to do it once.
It wasn't very convenient. It wasn't a use case that was going to be replicated many times. And, it wouldn't be in this case either, realistically, but at least you've got certain barriers to entry down, at that point. But, you've got to weigh that against, how much more of a pain in the arse is it to get it to work, because you've got the whole, like, multi-display thing, right? And, that at times it's like, gotta put a GBA screen, down there, for you to look at, to replicate that experience. So, yeah, maybe that's more trouble than it's worth, but it's the kind of thing that would be, again, you'd really, really like to see it. But, we're only at the beginning with GameCube, and hey, Virtual Boy's coming in a few weeks' time. So, they're still adding whole new systems to the service at this point. I don't know how much they'll keep sort of plugging away at the ones they've already got. I certainly hope so, considering the some of the very notable holes that are still in the ones that we've got.
Like aggressive inline, absolutely necessary.
Somehow, someone had to bring up aggressive inline. If it wasn't you, it was going to be me.
Acclaim, I just want y'all to understand how fucked a company Acclaim was. Acclaim had a sports brand that operated as a separate publisher. But then they also had a brand called AKA Acclaim, which for those of you who don't know is also known as. This is a brand from Acclaim that they said was also known as Acclaim. What a terrible, terrible, awful company. Just abysmal. Like there's a bunch of stuff they could stick on there that would be, like, I would be very interested in seeing how people react to the original ass Animal Crossing on the service. Animal Crossing 1. I know you're going to say, that Butsuno Mori was on N64. It's the same goddamn game. It's the same goddamn game. That's why you could take the disc out and it runs just fine. Just see, like, what people would react to how raw that game was in the moment. Because it is pretty raw. Like, it feels very restrictive very quickly.
Unless you had a GBA, and then you could go to your island for a vacation.
They
would have to work that in somehow.
Well, I think they can worry about that after they get the important things of Blood Rain and Bloody Roar Primal Fury on the service, and we'll be good to go.
Nice.
I really should stream Primal Fury one day just to show you how fucked the final boss is. Then the secret boss, then the double secret boss.
The thing is, because like Primal Rage exists, Primal Fury sounds like a sort of, Bone Storm style, like Simpsons parody of a video game title rather than an actual one.
You're right, it does. Could they get the rights to Burnout and Burnout 2? Like, I know Acclaim owned them originally, but now they're Criteria, which means they're EA, which means they're gonna be private equity. Like, could they make that work? I feel like that. I haven't seen any evidence that they want to do anything with them, so, like, fuck it. Let's go. Let's get fucking cell damage on here for your car combat needs. God. All right, we need to move on. I'm talking about cell damage. We've already crossed many Rubicons, and perhaps have found a new Rubicon to also cross. So on that, we're going to end the show because it's been about 2 hours of content. Two emails, 2 hours. Truly, we have outdone ourselves. But these are broad topics. We could talk about them all day. And we did. So, emails go to rfn@nintendoworldreport.com. That is rfn@nintendoworldreport.com. That's rfn@nintendoworldreport.com. Gentlemen, before we wrap the show, I do want to touch on very, very briefly. They had the Mario movie sequel direct, Super Mario Galaxy. It's exactly what you'd expect. They showed a bunch of Yoshi. Yoshi's cute. That's it. That's the trailer.
He's got a super scope that seems like it's in like a blue Wii remote condom.
Yeah, it does. You're right. It's odd. What I found really funny about that was it aired in the morning North American time, and it was the same. I want to say it was the same night as the college national final. And that trailer aired like 7 hours later, right in the middle of the TV spot. It's like, damn, they did not waste any time. They had that media plan locked up. But yeah, there's something that noteworthy about it. And then we got the Tomodachi Life Living the Dream Direct, including the creepy old man who, when's it coming out, making his appearance. New content-wise, you can pick your gender, including non-binary. You can pick what kind of people your character is interested in, including no one. You can make them have no romantic interests. And then we basically just got a weird skit for like 20 minutes with me, Koizumi, coming in every so often and talking about it. Guillaume, did they make the voices worse? It feels like the text-to-speech is more crazed sounding than ever.
No, I think it's pretty equivalent.
You probably just haven't heard it for a while. It's been 12 years, you know.
But there were like moments where it would just suddenly like shoot up like 2 octaves and go like, "Well, I think we should get out these birds." It's like, what the fuck was that?
I don't, they definitely haven't made it better. Let's put it that, because I think they feel like that's kind of the joke. Like that's the hook.
They could make it a little less grating and it still be bad.
Well, my favourite part is where they had the scene, you know, and this was a familiar scene to anybody who played the 3DS game, where, you know, there's someone is trying to express their affection for the clown fellow in this particular case, because it's like the text to speech and it's sort of cutting off love because they're hesitating to simply LO. It's instead of, but you know, because it's text to speech, it's like low instead of la, as you would, you know, if you was actually cutting off the word love. So it kind of sounded like they were about to say "I loathe you."
I mean, it's a clown. That would be appropriate.
Yeah, I mean, understandable reaction, but it's just like, I love the idea. Someone's not being able to get out the word love. So what they can get out sounds so much like its antonym.
The clown does have a name, Hugh Morris.
Yeah, which is
unless
a wrestler.
You were watching the UK Direct, in which case he was called Bubbles. Very peculiar.
That is weird.
Okay.
Now I need to go find out what he was
as well. Apparently, he did.
What?
I watched the UK version, and then afterwards I read up some of the coverage, and they mentioned that it was still a clown, but with a different name and quite a different sort of clown costume, makeup, and an overall sort of aesthetic.
What the fuck? I guess they would have to redo it because the characters are talking, but still, like, I would assume they have a debugger where they could just like make all that change. What's funny is Hugh Morris was the name of a wrestler, Bill DeMott, in the 90s and early 2000s. John and I have made jokes about late era WCW a lot. One of the crass and churlish things they did was they changed his name to Hugh G. Rection. Cause it's very childish. Also, for a little while, he was in a military faction named General Erection. It's bad. It's really fucking terrible. But yeah, Hugh Morris and I had like a brief like, oh God, it's back. Donald made the same connection though, so at least I felt like I wasn't alone in that moment of just brief reinforced trauma. but beyond that, like, we got a date for it. What date's in May?
April.
And I don't know that we got a whole lot else super new.
Well, we still got the better part of 3 months before it comes out, so I assume
they're going to give us another 20-minute skit with Koizumi narrating, aren't they?
But it does seem like the main difference is that you will have more customization. Because you kind of had to. You could choose like the personality for your Miis in the 3DS games, but I don't think that you could give them what did they call it? Not a perk. A quirk?
A quirk, certainly, at least in the UK script. That's what
they call it, yeah.
And you couldn't, like, I don't think there was an island to customize. That you didn't really have control over like the rooms of your Miis or anything.
Were there sentient teddy bears in the DS game or the 3DS game?
Not that I recall. No.
Okay.
They think you could like create little pets for the people, like that's got to be new, right?
The drawing stuff. Yeah. It's weird. It's a weird. I don't even want to call it a game because I don't think that's fair. I think it's a product. And that's not to be derisive. I just don't think there's a win state, which sort of is a predicate for it being a game. It's like a weird entertainment device. That's up there for weirdest directs. Like, it's not quite the Animal Crossing Pocket Camp one, where we had like the trailer, literally a trailer, not like a trailer for the game. Like we saw a guy dressed as the character living out of a trailer at a campsite. That was weirder. This is in the neighborhood. This is adjacent in terms of it's the fact that they turned Koizumi into a Mii and then had him host it as a Mii, where it's just like, what the fuck is happening? For a single like YouTube drop direct, they packed a lot of weirdness in a very short period of time. There was one thing that came up in the website, which was that you won't be able to take screenshots and video of this game clips, which is weird. It was on the disclaimer on the thing. You will be able to use the share app. What is it? Not game share. The chat focused thing on Switch 2. You'll be able to use game chat, where you could share video. You'll be able to do that, but you won't be able to take screenshots and share them via the Nintendo app or via direct social media posts from your system.
Yeah, that's weird. With what social media has become in the last few years, I kind of understand, I guess, but
not with the app though. Like what? That's weird. Like, it's their own goddamn app.
Yeah, it seems maybe it's a bit conservative. I guess because it's so customizable. Well, so customizable, more customizable than the other game was, right? As Guillaume mentioned, right? It does seem like that's a lot of the appeal. But with that comes, I guess...
flesh-colored whistles.
Well, yeah, we've talked about this in the past, that, if you give any kind of capacity to customize things, it does come with risks in terms of, especially with Nintendo being so keen to protect its, kind of reputation as being a reliable place for your kids to be entertained without horrible things, coming to get them or whatever. Because, like, don't forget, thinking about this period of time when, around about when the 3DS game came out, like Swap Note, remember that? And they had to shut that down because, it was... stuff was getting shared around and people were putting inappropriate things in it, that can blow back on them. Like, so I don't know whether it's just their attempt to get out in front of stuff like that, but I assume they would not have taken that decision lightly, considering that you would have thought in a lot of ways, one of the ways in which you're hoping that this game, could kind of, get out there is going to be people, sharing like, oh, this random thing happened. This person said something funny, that is a fair amount of the kind of appeal that I can recall, that the game held when it was on 3DS. And obviously people didn't have great sharing infrastructure for that. They probably just recorded it with their phones off the 3DS screen or whatever. But yeah, I assume it did help sell it because it was relatively a decent performer, I think, actually.
Yeah, it was.
Considering, 3DS wasn't the easiest place to sell particular games. And this is a weird kind of game. They didn't even localize its DS predecessor. So they kind of took a chance on it and it did okay for them. And 12 years have gone by. Every 3 World Cups, a Tomodachi Life game will emerge, or Winter Olympics if you prefer. Yeah, so it's kind of it's nice to see it back, but I guess that even if it does limit how well the word of mouth can spread, they feel like they've got to cover their backsides on this one.
All right, fair enough. We also got a trailer for the Virtual Boy, which is fast approaching. They gave us a rundown of here's the launch lineup. Here are games that are going to come later in 2026. You'll be able to remove a piece of it and then change the color it displays in. Shrug.
But not at launch. That will come later.
No, that comes later. And also
I will say, I do, you could say, well, big bloody deal, right? Of sort of not having the black and red, have black and something else. I feel like playing a golf game that's black and red is just wrong. So black and green, I think I could do. I could manage that.
I think you need to play it in black and yellow to really just amp up.
Just because I'm frequently in the bunker and a trap there forever.
There you go. Perfect. But also we're getting 2 games that never actually made it to market because the Virtual Boy fucking died. So that's neat. Like, I'm glad
so Zero Racers is like the F-Zero-ish one, and but it's another wireframe sort of 3D one rather than sprite based. So like Red Alarm, and it's kind of like in a tunnel. Obviously wireframe, simple wireframe stuff like this is not very easy to really distinguish in 2D, videos of them. It kind of looks almost more like some sort of primitive Star Wars thing, like you're flying a, starfighter in a, tight tunnel or something. It seems like it's all tunnel based, rather than, the typical kind of hovercraft racetrack scenario of F-Zero, but still, interesting.
I think that was pretty much it for that one. Cool. All right. Well, unless y'all have anything else, I think I'm going to ask Greg for music.
Sure, yeah, and I think I wanted to follow up the Tomodachi Life, sort of direct and everything with something. This is the theme from, because don't forget it had stage in Smash Brothers, where you get to see the different like residents in the different rooms and stuff. And this is like a sort of a sped up version, because oftentimes what Smash Brothers arrangements are doing, to try and take something, even if it's not, particularly kind of naturally suited to fighting action, is to go up tempo with it. And this one is of the track Afternoon on the Island, I think I want to say, and just speeds it up and makes a nice sort of pleasant, quick version of it as a result. And I've always remembered enjoying playing on that stage for some reason back on I think it was the 3DS game, right, that it would have had to be, I think that debuted in.
Cool. Well, on that, it is time for us to go. Maybe next week we'll have John back and do more than 2 emails. Bye everybody.
Bye.
Bye.